We're talking about sports today. We're talking about the WNBA. And something crazy. I've been watching a lot of sports videos, first of all. I've been watching a lot of sports videos here on YouTube. There's a lot of good content out there about the history of sports, modern sports, sports video games, all kinds of crazy stuff I've been watching lately. But one thing that's popped up just over the past few days or so is videos about these are videos about the WNBA pay gap. Just a sip of my tea here. Very posh. There's a big, huge pay gap, a pay disparity between the WNBA female players that play in that league and the NBA, the male players. Basically, the male players are making millions of dollars more than the WNBA players. Like, you have the best WNBA players who are making less money than the worst NBA players. People that are stars in the WNBA, leading their teams to championships, winning MVPs, are getting paid less than the people who don't even play and just sit at the end of the bench in the NBA. And if we just looked at that's terrible, right? It's horrible. And if we just looked at the surface of it, we would think, oh, that's unfair, that's unjust. But when you actually start to investigate it, even a tiny bit, this narrative of there being some sort of maliciousness or a true pay disparity, it falls apart. It absolutely falls apart. The reality is that this is based on financial success. The WNBA is owned primarily by the NBA. And because the NBA owns it, and the NBA makes billions of dollars off of the backs of those men who play in those teams, right? They're leading those teams. They're selling merchandise. They're selling video game licensing. They're selling advertisements during the games on television. And all of these games are televised. Not all on national television, broadcast television. Not all on this, on ESPN or NBC or whoever's showing basketball these days. But not just on those, but, whether it's a local, Fox Sports affiliate has all of the Suns games or all of the Pacers games or whatever it is. All of those games are being shown somehow on television. The WNBA is not like that. The WNBA can barely sell their video games. They don't have video games. Oh, they're in a video game. They're in the NBA video games, but they're not really selling those. Is that a big selling point? I want to buy this game because I don't think so. I don't know the facts on that one, so we'll stick to what I do know, which is that the WNBA's games are not being shown on television all that often. They had a deal with Lifetime, which is primarily marketed towards women. Now, you'd think that women would watch the WNBA on Lifetime. It's already geared towards them. Shouldn't they be really excited? The reality is most women, this is the truth, okay? This is the truth. I'm only saying the truth here. Most women don't care about sports. If I ask my wife right now, and I will do this when she gets home, I'll ask her. I may even call her up right now. No, I'm not going to do that. And ask her, I'll do it. Let's call her. Why not? Why not? This is my video. I can do whatever I want. Those games aren't being shown on television. And Lifetime canceled those games. They don't show the games on Lifetime because nobody watched it. It was terrible. Hi, I'm going to put you on speaker and ask you a question, okay? Can you name any WNBA players?
No.
Can you name an NBA player or more than one?
Yes.
All right. Would you do that for us?
Charles Barkley.
Current.
Oh, current?
Mm-hmm.
That might be more difficult. Stephen Curry.
Yep. There you go. Steph Curry. That's one. What about a guy that
What is his name? I can't do it.
It's fine. It's fine. The point is, you don't know any WNBA players. Thank you. There's a woman who watches professional wrestling. Okay, who likes basketball but hasn't watched it since the Suns started sucking. Who couldn't name a single historical, because she was willing to name Charles Barkley and to go through all the names that she watched when she actually watched the NBA, when she actually enjoyed watching the NBA. She was willing to go through all those, right? She named Steph Curry. She was probably thinking of LeBron James, but just, she's busy doing something important right now, and I probably shouldn't have called her. But there you go. She can't name a single. She doesn't care about that. And this isn't someone who doesn't care about sports in general. This is someone who will sit down and watch sports if it interests her. But she has no interest in the WNBA. Now, Lifetime canceled the games. They don't show the games on Lifetime anymore, or the Oxygen Network, which also is geared towards women, was showing games and canceled them because the ratings sucked. But a few years ago, the ratings for the All-Star game, the WNBA All-Star game, this is the best of the best. These are the players that everybody thinks are the greatest in the WNBA, and they're playing against each other. That should be a huge high rating game, right? It had very low ratings. It had lower ratings than the year before. And you see this as a trend in the WNBA. The ratings get worse. Their attendance gets worse every year. They're having to give away free tickets to almost every single game. And not just every single game, but every playoff game. These are playoff games where they have to give away free tickets to have people come to the games. Now, the ratings for that All-Star game I was talking about were somewhere around, I think, 500,000 people watched it. I don't have the exact figure. You can look it up. You can fact check me. I don't care. So I was thinking about this as I heard this statistic. I said, okay, I have seen on ESPN cornhole. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with the game cornhole, basically you have two people on a team or one person on a team, and across the way is a board that's angled with a hole in it, and you have a bean bag, and you throw the bean bag into that hole, and you get points if it lands on that board and stays there. You get a certain amount of points. If it goes through the hole, you get a certain amount of points. It's called cornhole, and mostly they show this on ESPN, okay, which is, I've watched it. I've enjoyed it. I play it at picnics. It's a fun picnic game. And most of the players, the people participating in this, including women, who I watched the women, and it was just as interesting. They're like young college-age kids who are probably playing cornhole while drinking a couple of brewskis, okay? That's a random sport to be showing on a sports network, right? We wouldn't think that that's that great, but I looked it up. Okay, this isn't scientific. I didn't find all the stats for cornhole, but at least one cornhole game, there were 400,000 people watching the cornhole championships. Think about that. That's 4 people throwing a bean bag across, 15 feet or something. I don't know how far away. I don't know the rules of cornhole. I apologize. But think about that for a second. The reality is that the cornhole championships are more interesting to people. Well, not more, but as interesting as the WNBA. And this isn't like the cornhole championships had some prime time viewing. This wasn't in prime time hours. These are shown during the day a lot of the time. They're not even live sports, the cornhole championships. They're pre-recorded. Now, if the cornhole championship players, right, these cornhole players, if they came to us and said, hey, we play a sport and we have to train for this and we've had to put in lots of hours to get good at throwing this beanbag into that hole. Just like those basketball players have spent hours learning to be good at shooting a basketball into a hole. We deserve millions of dollars. We would all laugh at them and say, you're playing cornhole. You're only getting 400,000 people to watch you. Dr. Disrespect gets 400,000 people to watch him sometimes. YouTubers get that many people watching them live. And that's just one person. It's this idea that they deserve millions of dollars. Based on what? A few years ago, I think about 2 years ago, roughly, the WNBA's union, they got mad because of this pay gap, right? And they said, hey, NBA, WNBA, we need more money. We're not going to sign a new collective bargaining agreement until you give us more money. Promise that we're going to be paid more money. And when they were asked about the financials, the union was asked, hey, what about those financials? We've heard that the WNBA loses money. These are reporters asking them these. They invite these women onto their sports shows and they ask them basic questions about the reality of the financial situation of the WNBA. They're unwilling to answer about them because they're embarrassed of them. They're embarrassing. And then they say, we don't have all the financial details. And so then the WNBA comes out, the people that run it, they come out and they say, they have all the financial records. They know exactly how much money is being brought in and how much money is spent. They know exactly how much. And it turns out that the WNBA was losing over $10 million a year. These are multiple years. They're losing $10 million. Now, if we separate this from the NBA, we separate the WNBA from the NBA, the WNBA would go out of business. No one in their right mind would look at $10 million, a $10 million loss every year and say, yeah, we need to pay these people more money. No, they would say, we're closing up shop. Sorry, guys, we made a good effort. We thought maybe people would like to watch women's basketball. We were wrong. I'm really sorry. You guys are talented athletes. You're better than most of the people on the planet in terms of basketball. You can beat men. You can probably beat a lot of college basketball players that are men. My shirt is all janked up here. There we go. Doesn't matter. The point is, no one would do that. They would not subsidize this. They would not just take a $10 million loss unless they were bringing in as much money as the NBA does. So the reality is the NBA, out of the goodness of their evil, communist, China-loving hearts, are paying these women even though it's costing them money. They're not bringing in a profit. They're losing money. If it was to be just standalone, if the NBA said, we're tired of taking the loss, we're tired of we have investors, we have people that we have to please here, and they got rid of it. They sold it off to somebody. It would close. Look at how many football leagues have been started in the past couple of years and how many of them have gone bankrupt after 1 year or less of playing games. It's hard to start a professional sports league. And to do it with huge financial backing, it happens all the time. The XFL, right? Twice, Vince McMahon of the WWF, the first time, and the WWE this time, has tried to get a new football league off the ground because he loves football. Both times it has failed. This time because we had COVID and a bunch of garbage happen. But it's extremely hard, and the dude's a billionaire. But he's not bringing in billions of dollars every year. That's all his, right? So he can't just continually subsidize millions of dollars worth of not only just paying players, but paying coaches, because all of the teams were owned by the XFL this time. Paying the salaries of people who work for the organization and administration, and all this stuff. He couldn't do it. He's a billionaire. The reality of the situation is the WNBA does not justify itself in making that much money. In the real world, you don't go to your McDonald's employer and say, hey, look, man, you're not paying me enough. You're not paying me $1 million to flip these burgers. And the McDonald's employer doesn't say, you're right. I've been horrible. I'm making $100,000 here as a business owner of a franchise. My manager's making $60,000, $70,000. But you, the hourly worker, you're only making minimum wage or a little bit above it. I'm so sorry. That person isn't bringing in that much money. These places would go bankrupt if they started paying people way more. That's why you see small businesses, especially non-franchises, some franchises, when minimum wage starts to increase, when the government says you have to pay more money to these people, people lose their jobs. A relative of mine was making above minimum wage at her job. That's fantastic. Then new minimum wage gets voted on in her county. Now she's making minimum wage because the company that she worked for, the place that she worked for, didn't start magically bringing in more income. They can't justify, they were already paying her what they could pay her. And then what happens when that minimum wage gets raised $1 more and they can't afford it because they're not bringing in any more revenue? The WNBA makes no money as a whole. They lose money. The fact that they exist at all, and it's not like they're making $0 here. It's not like they're making minimum wage at this shop. They're making more than the average person in the United States. And yes, they put in a lot of time, and I'm sure it takes a toll on their bodies doing this physical sport. But the reality is they are subsidized by the NBA. And as much as these women might be fantastic athletes, and as much as we might think that the idea of a female league for basketball players would be a good thing, the reality is, if it makes no money, if they're continually losing how many people, having less people go to the games, losing how many people watch the games on television, they're losing their deals with television channels. They're having to give away tickets to playoff games. They're being viewed as much as cornhole. They cannot ask for more money. They're already losing $10 million a year. As a whole, the WNBA supposedly, this is a statistic, I didn't check this, I just heard it from somebody. If I'm wrong, oh well. Makes $52 million. Okay, that's a whole. As a whole, that's how much money it brings in. That's not talking about the expenses, okay, which exceed that. Some players in the NBA get paid $52 million. Why? Because they bring in money. As a whole, the NBA brings in more money. The teams bring in more money. They sell more merchandise. People can name those players. Explosion! Fly,